My name is Bryce Bigelow. Today we're going to talk about happiness. Let's say you walk into a bookstore. You walk down the aisles, you see a bunch of fiction. You see westerns, romances, science fiction, etc. Then you wander over to the self-help section. In the self-help section, there'll be a big part there that's on happiness. There's all kinds of book on happiness. How to find happiness, how to obtain happiness. My favorite, how to pursue happiness. All the way from Dr. Phil to the Dalai Lama, people telling you how to find happiness. What if happiness is not out there? What if happiness is something inside here? What if we already have happiness, but something's in the way? Well, that's where we get into diagnostic approach. What is a diagnostic approach? Diagnosis is identifying the nature of a problem by examining its symptoms. Well, if you go to a doctor and you say, "Hey doc, I want to find health. I want to obtain health. I want to pursue health." He's got to look at you like you're half crazy and go, "Wow, this guy just lost his copay." The doctor does not believe that health is out there. He believes that health is inside. We naturally have it. But there's something in the way. If you're sneezing, sore throat, those are symptoms. But they're symptoms of a problem. So he uses the diagnostic approach to determine what the problem is. So you have an infection. You're sick. Get rid of the infection. The symptoms will go away. You'll be naturally healthy again. Well, there's this fella some time back. I'm going to call him Sid. We'll talk more about him later. He thought happiness was our natural condition. We are naturally happy. Something's getting in the way. Something is interfering with this happiness. What he found was interfering with this happiness was something called suffering. Now, before all of you stand up and go, duh, remember, suffering is just the symptom. Let's find the root cause of the suffering. That's the problem. Suffering is a symptom. Let's find the problem. If we remove that problem, we should naturally be happy. Well, what he discovered was that problem causing suffering is attachments. And you have to let that sink in a little bit. Attachments cause suffering. That suffering is keeping us from being happy. Let's look a little closer at the nature of attachments. What kind of attachments do we have? We have a variety of them. There's physical attachments to material things like cars, houses, jobs, retirements. There's also emotional attachments to spouse, significant other, boyfriend, girlfriend, family members, the works, even community, society, etc. And there's also spiritual, ideological attachments, religions, superstitions, etc. All of these are attachments. And what Sid found is that by removing those attachments, you will find happiness. Let me give you a quick example. I want a Porsche 911. You run out, you buy the Porsche 911, and it's wonderful. It's shiny, it glimmers, all your friends are impressed. It's really cool. After a while, well, it's not so shiny. After a while, you begin to find that you really don't like making those huge payments. You don't like paying that insurance. Somebody drops a grocery cart at the store and scratches your paint job, and it's like, suddenly that new car is not so much fun anymore. It's become an attachment, and it causes suffering. Now, that's a very simple example, but it can extrapolate to everything in your life, to your job, to your relationships, to your ideologies. For example, emotional. The happily ever after example. If I marry the right prince, the right princess, I will live happily ever after. How often does that work out? Spirituality, you find that material items in life just don't seem to do it anymore. Your relationships stink. I'm going to turn to religion. They promise you the world. They promise you happiness if you just believe this, believe in this God, believe in that goddess, etc. And then eventually you begin to find that it doesn't really do anything either. The reason is because you're not pursuing happiness, you're pursuing pleasures. Pleasures are not true happiness. If you're sitting on a mountaintop and you look out at the valley below you and the woods and the mountains, and you take a deep breath and you feel this overwhelming sense of peace and contentment, that's happiness. The new car is not happiness. That's a pleasure. And pleasures are attachments. Well, how do we fix that? Sid found that ending the physical attachments does help. I mean, you can become minimalist, get rid of all the fancy cars, all the fancy items in your life, and that will lighten the burden, less attachments. Get rid of the bad relationships in your life. Give up on the old superstitions and ideologies that make your life miserable. I mean, how many people are dying around the world today because of religion? We're in a war right now because of religion. Those old superstitions do not bring you happiness. But what's more important is Sid discovered it's not really so much the outside attachments, the physical attachments in our life that are causing our major suffering. It's the attachments in here. It's the attachments in the mind. Now, the same way that a doctor goes about studying the human body to discover how it works so that he can fix the problems of the human body, Sid studied the mind. He examined the mind to see how it works so that he could help fix those problems in the mind. What Sid came up with is extraordinary. First of all, he kind of broke the world up into several pieces. There's the physical world around us. There are our perceptions, the five senses: sight, smell, taste, touch, hearing. The five senses, they're all coming into our mind. We have feelings: anger, jealousy, joy, ecstasy, lust. Those are all feelings that come into our mind. What he found also was another part of our mind, which I call the language center. When we are born, we are taught to label everything: chair, table, car, sky. We eventually take these words, we put them together in sentences. That is the sky. This is a chair. This chair is red. After a while, we're putting sentences together, paragraphs, entire dialogues. Those become thoughts. This is all what I call in the mind the language center. You have a feeling, anger. It goes through the language center. Oh, I'm feeling angry. That guy shouldn't have done that to me. You have a sensation. You see a car. It goes through the language center. Wow, that's a pretty car. I like that color red. So everything is going through this language center. And the mind is like a stage. And you are standing on that stage. And these little actors are walking out on the stage. You have a feeling, anger. It's walking on stage. But before it gets on stage, the script writer, the language center, hands it a script. So that anger now has a whole bunch of thoughts to go with it. Wow, I'm angry. I remember the last time I was angry. I hope to not be angry in the future. I'm going to really get revenge on that guy. I remember the last time somebody did that to me. It's a one simple sensation, one simple feeling, anger. And suddenly you have an entire dialogue wrapped around this one feeling. Same thing with perceptions. You see a car. That picture of that car just doesn't come in your mind and go away. No, you run it through the language center, and as that vision of the car walks on stage, the language center hands him a script. And he begins to read off this script. So you have all these actors running around on the stage, all of them with scripts, and they all become thoughts. And they're all pushing you and pulling you. You know, the good thoughts are pulling you. Ooh, I want a new Porsche. Ooh, that girl's pretty. I want to meet her. And then you have the other thoughts that are pushing you around, like, oh, anger, jealousy, hatred. But they're all pushing and pulling you. And all these thoughts on this stage are trying to convince you that we are you. We are who you are. And this whole play going on this stage even has a name. That name is Monkey Brain, the story of internal dialogue. That's what they call monkey brain, or all those thoughts running around inside of your head. Well, Sid saw the problem here. He says, all these thoughts, all these perceptions of the outside world, all these feelings rising up inside of us, guess what? They're all attachments. These attachments are causing suffering. And all this suffering is keeping you from being happy. All right. We have diagnosed the problem. You're not happy because you're suffering because of all the attachments in your head. How do we get rid of those attachments? Well, that's where the doctor comes in with the prescription. Sid came up with a two-step process. Step 1, concentration meditation. I'm not telling you anything new here. Concentration meditation is the meditation that most of us are familiar with. It's where you sit down and contemplate your navel. Now, to put it in a different framework, concentration meditation is like stepping off of that stage. Now, all these thoughts and perceptions and everything going around in your head, there's somebody inside of you who's perceiving all this. What Gilbert Ryle called the ghost in the machine, that consciousness that is perceiving everything going on. That's the real you up on the stage getting pulled back and forth. Well, if you can get that real you to step off of the stage and sit back and look at your mind objectively. In other words, when that thought comes into your head, you look at that thought and you go, you're a thought. Oh, you're a perception. You're a feeling. There's that inner you that recognizes that all these things going on are not the real you. So it's like stepping off of the stage and observing your mind, looking at your mind, looking at the stage. Once you do that, you pick a single actor. Pick the most boring actor you can find. You put him center stage and you focus on that one actor. Now this is what they call it. This is why they call it concentration meditation, because you concentrate on one thing. It could be a visual. It could be a mandala. It can be a candle. It can be whatever you want. It can be auditory. It can be a chant, number. A favorite trick of Eastern meditation is you count your breaths. So you get this one actor on the stage to stand there and just count. 1, 2, 3, up to 10. And he starts over. Every time you take a breath, 1, 2, 3, up to 10, start over. Boring? Extremely boring. But that is the whole point. The more monotonous and insignificant you make that actor, the other actors on stage are going to get bored and they're going to leave. When those actors realize they don't have your attention, they quit paying attention to you and they leave. They disappear. And that is why concentration meditation is so good, because it clears the brain out. And for a little while anyway, you have a quiet mind. The monkey brain has gone away. Now remember, this is just step 1. So now you're sitting in the audience, you're not on the stage anymore, nobody's pulling you, nobody's grabbing at you or pushing you, which is no wonder we drive ourselves crazy with all this crap going on in our mind. I mean, how many of you can't sleep at night because your brain's too active? Yeah, I'm giving you a trick here. Now you have one actor on stage, counting your breaths. It's good. You've cleared your mind out. But more importantly, you've realized that you are not that stage. You are not those actors. You are not in that play. You are something separate. Your consciousness is separate from your mind. Your mind is a separate toolbox. We use that mind for building bridges, designing cars, answering algebra problems. But that mind is not who we are. And once you distinguish that separation, your whole life changes. Now there's step 2. Step 2, we have a clear stage. We have an actor counting his breath. Well, if we could all just sit and meditate every day, life would be happy, right? Unfortunately, we got to do things like eat, work, buy groceries. We got to get on with life. Well, step 2 Sid came up with was a thing called mindfulness. Mindfulness is basically taking that meditation and putting it in everyday life. Once you look at the stage and you dismiss that one actor, your mind is clear. Now, can you keep that mind clear as you go through day-to-day activities? What you will find is you don't need those actors on that stage to function in the world. When you're driving your car, you're not thinking, push gas, take foot off gas, push brake, shift, turn on left turn signal, turn right turn signal. You're not thinking about those things. Those aren't actors on the stage. That all happens subconsciously. We've grown up, and subconsciously we know exactly what to do in day-to-day life. So we don't need those actors. So you try to go through the day with no actors on the stage. Complete emptiness. Now when you do that, you will begin to find that life begins to develop a certain degree of peace and contentment. And this is wonderful, because that leads to, you guessed it, happiness. In fact, Sid, who came up with all this, said, if you could maintain mindfulness from the time you wake up until the time you go to sleep for 7 days, you will become enlightened. So, what evidence do we have that any of this stuff works? Well, it's very simple. The University of Arizona, alma mater, did some research on happiness. They hooked electrodes up to the brain. They asked people to think of wonderful thoughts, and the meter went up in the positive. They asked them to think of the worst things that's ever happened to them in their life, and the meter went down to the negative. And then they brought in some Buddhist monks. I think they were Tibetan. They put the electrodes on their minds, and then they told the monks to meditate. And that meter went off the scale to the positive. Boom! Surprised everybody. So, you could actually say that monks are some of the happiest people in the world. In fact, even in TED Talks, they have a gentleman they call the happiest man alive. His name is Matthew Richard. And you can see his videos on TED Talk. And what is his profession? He's a Tibetan monk. And they practice all the stuff that I've been telling you about. So, before we leave, I just simply, you're probably curious about, okay, who's this Sid guy? Well, Sid, his full name is Siddhartha Gautama, and he lived about 2,600 years ago. And when he started teaching these techniques that I'm telling you about, people started calling him the Enlightened One, or in his native language, Buddha. Thank you for your time.